Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. I am Alice Carnes, a member of this church. It is November 28th, 2021. We are so glad you have chosen to be with us this morning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are welcome. Whatever reason you chose to click on the link or Google for our YouTube service, you are welcome. Whether you are new to this community or a longtime member, you are welcome. We are a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger and working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has dug into the fabric of our lives. I am live in our sanctuary and have with me today Erica Shadowsong, our Lifespan Religious Education Director, on piano, Maury Morales. Our tech crew is Will Snavely and Emily Sweeney, and our hymn leader is Shayla Collins. On behalf of this team, thank you for attending our online worship. If this is your first time with us, we would love to be in touch with you. If you have not already done so, please go to our website. What I'm going to read to you is in all small letters. first-unitarian-pgh.org and sign up for our weekly newsletter found at the bottom of the page. You are also invited to join us for social time following this live worship. Excuse me. To get a Zoom link, please send an email to, and this is again all lowercase and it's all one word, firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com. And now I invite you to take a deep breath. Arrive in body and spirit, and picture yourself connected to all others who are watching today and in the future. We turn to our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to light it at this time. We light this chalice in the name of Reverend Tyler Cole's sermon that we will view by video entitled Re-Remembering into Power. In this time of change, let us remember our ancestors as they guide and support us in creating a more just world. May this flame burn bright in your heart and mind as we worship together. Our Advent readings are from Reverend Dr. David Breeden. He is the senior minister of First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Advent, Adventus, means waiting, and the holiday season is nothing if not waiting to get done the chores, to find the right gift, to find time for quiet moments, to accept that our loved ones will not be as we wish them to be. We will light the chalice this holiday season, this time of waiting, to remind ourselves to enjoy the moment, the now of our lives. Yes, much is coming, and always we wait. But these things to come will also be now when they come. As we light our Advent calendar, this first Sunday of Advent reminds us to be patient. In this holiday season, may we find the patience to forgive ourselves, to forgive those who do not do as we wish. May we find patience. May we find the wisdom to let be.
Good morning. I'm Erica Shadowsong, Lifespan Director of Religious Education. Today I have a story of the season, in a way, a story from Celtic legend with some characters that you may recognize. A long, long time ago, in ancient times when the world was ancient, there was a mother. She was called Modron, which means great mother. And she had a child who was filled with the light of her love. And she named this child Mabon, which means great son. And she delighted in her son so much. But then something awful happened. When he was only 3 nights old, he was taken away from her by darkness. And no matter where she searched in every corner of the earth, she was unable to find her child of light. She searched for ages and ages, longer than any human lifetime, many human lifetimes, but never was she able to find her son. And her sorrow was as great and as deep as the oceans. Until one day, there came to her a visitor. You've heard of King Arthur. Well, King Arthur and his many knights on many of his different quests had this particular quest where he had been instructed to find the child of light, Mabon. So his first thought was to go and ask the mother. So they had searched and searched for Modron, the great mother. And he found her and he said, "Great mother, we are looking for your son, the child of light, Mabon." And she laughed bitterly and said, "Do you think you would have been sent to find him if I knew where he was? I've been searching for him for ages and ages, and I have not seen my child since he was 3 nights old. You might as well ask the blackbird, for it is the most ancient animal." And that was it. Well, Arthur didn't know what to do except to try to find the blackbird, this oldest of animals. So Arthur and his knights searched and searched the earth until they found the blackbird. The ancient blackbird was standing and scratching on a pile of dust. And Arthur said, "Oh, blackbird, oldest of animals, I am seeking the child of light, Mabon. Do you know anything about this child's whereabouts?" The blackbird looked up at him with its glittery eyes, and it looked down at the dust at its feet, and it said, "Do you see this pile of dust here? When I was young, this pile of dust was a great anvil made of the strongest iron, and no hammer had ever hit this anvil Only I stood here upon the anvil and pecked at it gently every single day until it remained nothing but this pile of dust. That is how old I am. And yet I have never heard anything of this child of light, Mabon. Arthur was shocked and he looked so discouraged. But then the blackbird said, "Yet there is an animal older than I. Find the stag. The stag may know something of the child of light." So Arthur and his party set off again, and they searched everywhere, and then they found the stag. The stag had antlers as big as a forest, stretched in every direction. They came to this great, noble animal, and Arthur said, "Oh, great stag, oldest of animals, I am looking for Mabon, the child of light. Do you know anything about his whereabouts?" The stag looked at Arthur and he said, "Do you see this forest of antlers on my head? As big a forest as any ancient forest you have ever seen? When I was young, this forest of antlers was only 2 points on the top of my head. That is how old I am. And yet I have never heard anything of this child of light. But," the stag said, "there is one older than me. Find the owl." So Arthur and his party set off. Apparently there was another older animal. They found the owl. The owl was sitting in an ancient forest valley, sitting high up in a tree. And Arthur said, "Owl, oldest of animals, I am seeking Mabon, the child of light." The owl looked at Arthur and said, "Do you see this forest valley stretched out past beyond where your eye can see? When I was young, this was a young forest, and people came in and they moved in and they cut it down and they burned it and they fought and they left. And then it grew up again. And then another group of people came in and they did the same thing. This is the third old forest that I have watched grown into wilderness. That is how old I am. And in all this time, I have never heard anything of Mabon, the son of Modron. But there is one older than I. Go find the eagle." So King Arthur and his party went and searched for the eagle, who was apparently the oldest of the animals. They found the eagle sitting with its claws, its talons, on a pebble. And they said to the eagle, "Oh, great eagle, oldest of animals, we are looking for Mabon, the child of light." And the eagle said, "Do you see this pebble that is clutched in my talons? When I was young, this pebble was a standing stone that stood higher than any mountain. It was so high that I could reach up into the sky and peck holes into it. And those are all the stars that you see. I've made all of them. That is how old I am. And in all that time, I have never heard anything of this child of light. But there is one perhaps older than I." And the eagle told a story of how once it saw a delicious-looking giant salmon swimming in a stream and tried to catch it, but the salmon was so strong that it almost dragged it under the water, and so the eagle had to let go. And the eagle said, "I believe this salmon, if anyone knows, would know. This, I think, is the oldest animal." So Arthur searched and searched and searched for a spring, a sacred pool that the eagle had told him about, and he found the salmon. And he asked the salmon about the child of light. And he prepared himself to hear about how old the salmon was. But the salmon said, "You know, each season I swim up the spring to a fortress of light, and there I have heard weeping and sorrow of one lost. I think that may be who you are looking for, and I can take you and one other." So Arthur said, "Yes, please, I would like to be taken to this place. I think that might be where I'm meant to go." And so the salmon took Arthur on his back and one other. And he swam and swam. It swam upstream until it reached this sacred valley, this hidden place in a mountain, and there was a fortress of light. Well, it was called the Fortress of Light, but it was actually dark and forbidding. Arthur came in and he pulled his sword out and he banged on the door trying to get into the fortress. The door was so old and rotted it crumbled right under his sword. He heard weeping down in the dungeons. He found the dungeons, and in there was a small light. And as he approached that light, he looked and he saw the child who had now grown into a man, so distressed and pathetic looking, crying in the corner. And Arthur said, "I am King Arthur. Are you Mabon, the son of Modron? Are you the child of light who was taken from his mother when it was only 3 nights old?" And the child, who had once been a child, looked up at him with childlike eyes. And it said, "Yes, I am. This was me, but I was taken, and I cannot leave this fortress." And the Arthur said, "Why can you not leave this fortress? Everything is rotted. You are free." And Mabon said, "Did you not see the shadows that were guarding this place? I have to battle these shadows, and I have been unable to battle them." And Arthur told Mabon that he saw no shadows coming in, but that if he did, he would battle them on the way out, if Mabon would only have faith and follow him. So Mabon got up and he followed King Arthur. And as Mabon went up the steps and left the dungeon, he grew brighter and brighter and brighter until he shone like the sun, and the fortress was once again a castle of light. And that is how King Arthur found Mabon, the child of light, returned him to the great mother, and went on his way to complete many of his other quests.
Wow. What a great story. It's now time for our offertory. Our religious community is made up of volunteers and staff creating and hosting a variety of programming. And even as we say stay safe during this time of pandemic, we rely on your financial support. Please take time to reflect on your ability to financially support this community. Donations by check may be mailed to the church office. Electronic donations can be made online through the church website or by texting GIVE to 412-435-1050 and following the instructions. Now is the time for sharing joys and sorrows. We hold each other in our hearts and minds with all of our joys and all of our sorrows. And especially today, Mary Alice Dabrowski is requesting prayers for her family as they grieve the passing of her brother, Joseph Dabrowski. After a long illness, Joseph passed over on Friday, November 26th. We remember those who are experiencing losses of various kinds and those facing health challenges. We are aware that many are faced with heightened difficulties presented by these times that continue to be challenging for all of us. May we find joy in our connections with each other and in the pleasures that life holds. Let us continue to care for one another and for ourselves in all the ways that we can. We hold each other in our hearts and minds with all of our joys and all of our sorrows, whether spoken or unspoken. Let us take a moment to be quiet together. Our prayer this morning is from Reverend Susan Maginn. You are not alone, dear one. You are among all those who have walked this straining path before. You are not alone. You are with the wisdom of all your ancestors who live, if nowhere else, in the cells of your body and breath, remembering you from the very beginning. You are not alone, you are with us. We are right there, smiling and shining upon you like starlight, holding and surrounding you in silence and song, forever renewing our faith in you. Blessed be. Beautiful. Our next reading is from Reverend Kathleen Mateague. She was formerly a minister of the Unitarian Society of New Haven in Hamden, Connecticut. This reading is entitled, "They Are With Us Still." In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives, and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are still with us. I knew I was going to do that. They are with us still. They are with us still. The lives they have lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living.
If you walk into my grandmother's house today, the first thing you would see are two walls full of family photos. On the right are photos of me and my cousins as we were but babies, chronologically ordered in an array in which we were born. On the other side are photos of my father, Terry, and his twin brother, Perry, and three of my uncles. Along them are photos of aunts and uncles, great cousins, nephews, as well as pictures of my great grandparents. There's a sense of complexity that such pictures bring to them, the complexity that family can only provide. Maybe you are like me, you know a bit about the family complexities that exist. Complexities which are, some are fine and good, others leave much to be desired. And some of those feelings are those of sorrow and despair, connection and hope, just to name a few. There is a sense of rootedness and a sense of disconnect. But thus are the connections and complexities of family. Here in this time, as autumn now begins to present notes of winter, as many of the leaves have begun to fall, and there's an occasional hint of burning wood in the air, we enter into the season in which many cultures here upon the land that is now North America and cultures around the world begin to intentionally and overtly honor their ancestors. Honor them with prayers and libations, sweets and parades. All observances by which that honor the complexity of family. Yet here in the United States, by and large, we don't see much of these family celebrations. As the Reverend Peter Morales, former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, once said, while we dwellers in a technological age are connected to the World Wide Web, cellular phones and cable TV, traditional cultures with their mediums and ghosts and reincarnations have understood intuitively something we're repressed, that the dead don't die. They live on. They live on. They live on in the antiques that we might covet. They live on in the actions that we swear we will not perpetuate with our children and descendants. They live on in our hopes for humanity and the ways we engage our democracy. They live on in how we are able to imagine in a wide and vast way, a better world not just for ourselves and for our immediate circles, but for the great wide web of creation. However, this imagining, dare I say, this remembering of our ancestors, of those who came before us, is not easy due to its innate complexity. Dare I say shame to some regard that exists within many of our familial lineages. But as the old saying goes, we must tell the truth and shame the devil. Meaning we must be willing to talk about those complexities, for there is power in doing so. There is power in telling the truth. There is power in telling the truth about our peoples and their experiences, about their triumphs and their shortcomings, about their hopes and dreams and fears and nightmares. There is truth in sharing about our lived experiences and the why and the how of our own lives. And there's power in naming how our lives are connected to the lives of those who came before us, and they for those who came before them, and so on and so on. And it is in this truth that we too must be honest in naming and how our actions, consciously and unconsciously, will shape who will come after us, whether they be descendants of blood, spirit, or tradition. Part of this truth is naming the hurt that exists within our own bodies, within our own experiences, within our own lineages, within our own communities. Sometimes this harm exists in a more magnitude way that exceeds just a moment, but in fact become a story, a narrative of trauma. The thing about trauma is that it pulls us to shadowy places within ourselves, especially when it comes to systemically rooted trauma vis-a-vis oppression. And when we name that unprocessed trauma in our lives, in our own bodies, we begin to see and understand how feelings of a lack of safety, a lack of dignity, or a lack of purpose tend to mediate their way up, gurgulating and shaping the ways we relate to ourselves, to our peoples, to the world, and even to the very land beneath our feet. Yet evidence of past trauma isn't hidden so far below the surface right now, especially at this time when many things seem so skin layer thick, fragile, much like our fragile democracy. We have seen in moments such as this, in this moment of innate tensity, how relationships and interactions between family and friends seem to hit a fever pitch. We see this played out on news and on Facebook and on Instagram, and the interactions between strangers and politicians within the last days, weeks, and years. We see this percolating up because the trauma of this current moment is calling to the trauma in us, and it is hard. Things are hard and things are complex. And yet we find ourselves in this moment, days before the election. I must say, I find it complex and somewhat challenging as people have presented the question of voting, the thing that is on many of our minds and holding heavy in our hearts, that voting is a way by which we honor our ancestors, by which we uphold democracy. And yes, I am a tried and true Unitarian Universalist, I would admit, but I am still complex by the way in which voting has been handed to me in my own lineage, handed to me in the lineage of democracy, the democracy that is yet ever more fragile in this moment. But I am reminded that voting is not solely about honoring those who work to fulfill the potentiality for us to be able to vote today, no matter if we be femme or Black or Indigenous. It is about one task that we all share as living upon this land and creating a more perfect union. Voting is but one part of our responsibility, our duty, our mandate in creating something more beautiful. This sentiment is rooted in the struggle made known in Seneca Falls, in the Edmund Pettus Bridge, written into effect in Constitution Hall, and yet the work must continue on. Because there is the truth that the lessons of the past present wisdom for today and hope for the future. There is good news in the very real possibility of healing at any moment. There is good news that we ourselves can work towards becoming good ancestors today. And this healing occurs through bringing ourselves into ourselves, bringing our communities into themselves through acts of transformation rooted in truth-telling, rooted in accountability, rooted in reorienting and moving forward in different ways. Healing as it addresses trauma, healing as it addresses the reality of the complexity of our ancestors, is about bringing into ourselves and our people the wholeness of ourselves. Because in healing, we find liberation. Because the reality is that healing and liberation go hand in hand. Part of this is about remembering onto ourselves, remembering into ourselves the fullness of our own power, the fullness of the power in which we each have inherited to breathe and to conjure and to create new ways of being, of new ways of relating to one another, of building communities and churches and organizations, about invoking the beloved community in the here and now. As the theologian and leader James Luther Adam once said, the creation of justice and community requires the organization of power. Through the organization of power, the free person ties into history. Otherwise, one cannot achieve freedom in history. Injustice in community is a form of power, an abuse of power, he says. And justice is an exercise of just and lawful institutional power. We find ourselves in this moment, both individually and as Americans living on this land, presented with a moment to name our ancestors, to name the legacies, no matter how complex they might be, in order to create healing, in order to push back the tides of trauma that exists within us and within the world, to create healing. For the truth is, we hold the steering wheel of history collectively. We have the ability to make a choice in the here and now. Will we move into what comes next, downtrodden and disheartened? Or will we go forth today, remembering power into and onto ourselves in order to aid in the inbreaking of heaven on earth towards creating a more just world? For I know there is the possibility of healing. I have seen it this day and all of the days in which we have connected to one another. And I believe in the power of naming unto ourselves, of honoring the complexities of those power legacies that exist within us and creating a more blessed and beloved and beautiful world. For let us remember our power unto ourselves. For there is strength and love. May it be so. Amen.
Listen more often to things and to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters.
This is the time for extinguishing our chalice, but I don't have someone here to do it, but that's okay. I thought I would say the words, because I'm trying to learn these words, so I was going to say it and then you can repeat after me. We extinguish this flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again, until we are together again. Thank you, Shayla. We send you on your way. May you know the love of family and friends in this beloved community. May you know the joy of creation and the power of justice. Return again in love and in peace. May it be so.
Thank you.